Rosalyn Newhouse from the Oregon Home Education Network. Rosalyn has been working with the homeschool community as a homeschool parent, tutor, teacher, curriculum writer, and consultant for over 20 years. And she is currently the president of the Oregon Home Education Network. Thank you so much for coming to speak with us today, Rosalyn.
Well, thank you for hosting this event. We have had at Oregon Home Education Network, we have a website, we have a discussion forum on Facebook, which is, I assume, where a lot of people heard about this event. And we have a helpline where people can call in or email to ask questions. And we've just been swamped the last couple of months with questions from people who they're wanting to know, how do you homeschool now? What are we going to do? And should I homeschool or should I school at home? And so we're very grateful that you're presenting this forum for people to help them figure it out. Should we just go through the slides? Okay. So, yeah, as I said, what is 2020 going to look like for people? We've got, everybody's at home right now. There are a few opportunities for people to attend school or attend classes in person, but they're few and far between, and it's not really nailed down how that's going to work because you know, people just keep coming up with different scenarios and different safety regulations and different ways of dealing with it. So we're talking, for the most part, in Oregon, as in most of the country, we're talking about learning at home for almost all students. And there are different ways that we can do that. One of the ways, and probably the most prevalent right now, is going to be the public school at home, which is, you get a couple different names. You've got school at homing, crisis schooling, pandemic schooling, and distance learning, which seems to be the term that's being used the most. You've got public charter schools, which are also online, but they're a little different from the distance learning model. The public charter schools have always been designed to be done online at home. So it might look the same, but it's a little different. We're going to talk about each one of these in more detail. And then you have private online schools. These are schools that they're not part of the public school system, but you can sign up and attend online. And then you have the independent homeschooling, which is what OHAN has been supporting for many years, and what we call true homeschooling, independent homeschooling, real homeschooling, normal homeschooling, as if any homeschooling is normal. So I want to talk a little bit about these different models and what is these methods. Okay, the public school at home is, again, this is the most prevalent. This is what most people are doing. If your child was attending a public school, then you have been offered the option to have your child continue attending that public school at home. And I have friends and relatives who work in public schools, and I know they are just scrambling to try to figure out how to do this. I think we've all pretty much experienced what it's like to participate in Zoom meetings. And if you can imagine trying to run a Zoom meeting with 20 children as your participants, you can probably imagine how challenging that might be. And especially you add to that the challenge of getting through a standard curriculum, using the state standards, using the textbooks that we've all been used to using. So the schools are really trying to create a model that is going to work for kids when they don't have the kids in the classrooms. And this is it. We're all learning as we go along. So things might change from week to week as we all try to get around the difficulties, get around the challenges. Generally, with public school at home, the lessons will be provided by the school. They'll send you workbooks, or they'll put together online classes. There may be some required scheduled attendance online. Everybody come to the math class at 10 o'clock on Tuesday, or whatever. Or there may be recorded sessions, or there may be just kind of ad hoc sessions where they send out an email and tell you there's going to be a class the next day or something like that. And there may be, depending on how things are going, there may be some in-person attendance. Some of the schools have been talking about putting kids into different groups, different cohorts, saying, this group will come to school in person on Mondays, this group will come in on Tuesdays, and try to organize the lessons that way and still keep people safe. So again, it's going to be a challenge, but you do have one of the advantages here. You have the support of the public school system, and so there's a tremendous infrastructure involved with this. And the public charter schools, these have been around for a while, and this is kind of a bit of a hybrid between the in-person public school and true homeschooling that people have found workable for themselves. This is where you enroll in a charter school, and there are I think about a dozen of them or more in Oregon, where the school is designed to be distance learning and not necessarily all online. Well, a great deal of it is. You either have courses that are designed for kids to work through online. Sometimes they're online meetups. The education is supervised by the charter school, and there may be some flexibility in the curriculum depending on the school. You have some are, you have a curriculum that's pretty standardized, and the school works with the family to move you through that curriculum on a fairly regular schedule. Or some of the schools will say, it's up to you to choose the curriculum, but we will supervise your progress through it. They may have, some of the charters have stipends. They'll actually give you funds to purchase extracurricular classes and materials. Some of those are pretty open-ended. Some of them are more, you can choose off of an approved list. So there's a great deal of variation in what's involved in charter schooling for kids. Some of them also will provide a computer for students, and a few of them will provide internet service or pay for internet service for you. So again, this is part of the public system. It's done mostly at home. It's always been done mostly at home. Charter schools have been around for, the online charter schools, maybe about 10, 12 years. So it's, these schools are probably having the easiest time of transitioning to this new normal, because they've already been set up to work primarily online. And then there's something very similar, which would be a private online school, very similar to the public charters, but it's something that you pay for, whereas the public charters are free because they're public schools. A private online course or correspondence school, you pay for it, you buy a subscription to it. They send you the lessons by mail, or they provide the lessons online, just like the public charter. The program is supervised by the school. The curriculum is determined by the school. There's not as much flexibility in the private online schools. And some schools will provide their computers for the students too. And the main difference between the public charters and the private online schools is that the public charters are under the auspices of the public school system. The private schools are completely independent, and they may have a different track, different program, different curriculum. And then we have independent homeschooling, which is what OHAN has been supporting for a long time. We have, since the middle of March, we've been kind of opening our discussion forums and our help features to pretty much everybody, because everyone's at home now. But fundamentally, we're all about actual true homeschooling, and that's where it's an exception to the requirement that a student be in school between the ages of 6 and 18. The exception is that if a parent, a legal guardian, or a private tutor or teacher provides the educational program, then the public school, they don't have to be enrolled in a public or private school. In Oregon, we're really fortunate. In Oregon, we have very liberal, open-ended model for homeschooling. You notify the state that you will be homeschooling your child, and they acknowledge that they heard you, and then it's all up to you. You can provide classes and activities at home. You can provide them anywhere you want. You can go out field tripping. You can have other people teach parts of your program. You can sign up with classes at any institution that you want, basically. And the public system is not monitoring what you do. You don't have any required curriculum or particular hours. You don't have any attendance requirements. And there are many ways to do this. And it's up to you to choose how you want to homeschool. So how do you decide which one of these systems is going to be right for your family? I'm going to say, as a representative of OHAN, that there isn't really any one best way. It really does depend on what your family looks like and what your kids look like and how they're going to learn best. What is your family situation and your finances? Can you afford to homeschool? Can you afford to sign up with a private school? Can you afford not to homeschool? You know, it's just like, we do have families where both parents work. We have single parents who work. We have families where one parent earns a sufficient income to support the whole family, and the other one is the homeschooling parent. We have families who kind of double up with each other, families who have relatives who will help, you know, like grandma does the homeschooling while both parents work, or whatever. So there's really a lot of flexibility, but it is up to you, and something that, you know, you get together with the rest of your family. You say, well, can we make this happen, or how important is this, and what are the resources for that? You have, what is your ability to teach in terms of your time? You know, if both parents are working, or if you're single parent and you're working, you can still do this. There's one of the things they're always telling people is that school does not have to happen between 9 and 3. You know, we have a lot of families who are, you know, they'll work early in the morning, the kid sleeps in, and then they do homeschool stuff in the afternoon or the evenings. You can do all your homeschooling on the weekends, or you can do all your work on the weekends. So it's not a really rigid requirement that you homeschool during a certain part of the day or for a certain number of hours. In terms of What are your resources for teaching? Do you have access to the internet? Can you get to the library? I'll put in a plug for library here because library is a homeschooler's best friend. And if there's anything you ever wanted to know, there's a reference librarian who will have the answer for you or will tell you how to find it out. And then what does your child need? You know, their kids are really not one size fits all. And one of the reasons that we promote homeschooling as an organization is that a lot of kids just really don't do their best work when they're marching in lockstep with other kids of the same manufacture date, you know, and they're like, you know, 30 kids all going through the same program at the same time. A lot of kids really benefit by a much more individual approach or much smaller groups. Some kids need a lot of visual learning. Some kids would rather get everything out of a book and don't want to do group work. So you have to look at what does your child need, and is homeschooling going to meet those needs effectively, and is it going to meet those needs better than a public school kind of system? Consider what are the laws of homeschooling. They're very simple. You register your child, or actually file a notice of intent to homeschool when your child has turned 6 by September 1st, which is today. If your child is 6 today, then you should, if you're going to homeschool, you register with the Education Service District. And very, very simple. And then you take a test in math and language arts at the ends of grades 3, 5, 8, and 10 after you've been homeschooling for 18 months. So even if this is your first year homeschooling and your child is in 3rd, 5th, 8th, or 10th grade, you're not going to test at the end of this year. You get a free 18 months. And then you just, you're on your own. You can learn from other homeschoolers. You read books about homeschooling. Can we go back to the previous slide? Just a couple more things that you want to look at to decide whether homeschooling is going to work for you. What are your plans for the future? Is your kid going to go into engineering or law or robotics or something? There are some great opportunities in homeschool to allow for that. You know, so that shouldn't be a stop for you to choose to homeschool. But even such future plans as, are you going to go back to public school next year, or when current regulations allow it? You don't know really how long we're all going to be required to learn at home. But that's something you want to look at. Would you really rather go back to public school? And is this something you want to do just for a short time? Or is it something, do you want to really take the plunge and go for long-term homeschooling? So also something as a, you know, family discussion to have. Then you want to look at what are you going to teach and how are you going to teach it? And I cannot confine my answer to that in a 15-minute program, because there's so much to learn and so many different ways to learn it. One of the joys of homeschooling is that you have the opportunity to examine a lot of the different ways to teach and a lot of the different subjects to teach. There are going to be things that you just aren't going to learn in public school or even a private school, and there are ways to learn that aren't feasible in a public or private school. So then you go, what if it doesn't work out? What if you try homeschooling and you give it 6 weeks or 2 months, and this, like, everyone's tearing their hair out and nobody's happy, and you haven't gotten anything done, and you just hate it? Well, it's just an easy answer. You just go and enroll in a public school, and they welcome back. So it's very, again, a very easy transition between homeschooling and public schooling. And the biggest factor in transitioning is how is this going to work for your family? Because you do want some sort of regularity and standardization and prediction in your family situation. And then local resources, well, one of the best local resources there is other homeschooling families, and there are a lot of them. So, you reach out and connect up. And again, the libraries are just spectacular. Multnomah County Library System is all over the metro area. They just do the most wonderful job of interacting with families and with kids. Washington County Library System is terrific. The Clackamas County Library System is great. The Marion County, really all the library systems in Oregon are wonderful, and we've done a lot of work with all of them. So recommend hooking up with your local librarian and taking advantage. And this one we talked about, again, the laws are super simple. If you go to ohen.org/getting-started, easy to remember. Someone could type that into the chat box for me. That'll give you a good launching point for everything really that you need to know about homeschooling. All right, how do you homeschool? And this, we get this question so often. It's like, okay, I decided I want to homeschool, now what? Right? How do I start? Where do I go? What kind of curriculum do I need? Well, one way you can do it is to purchase or get for free from another homeschooling family, or very inexpensive from someone who's already used it, a comprehensive curriculum. And there are dozens of them. There's the Oak Meadow is a comprehensive curriculum, Easy Peasy, Abeka, Time for Learning. I mean, there are a lot of different packaged curriculums that you can get. We generally recommend don't get anything more than 1 year's worth of curriculum, because you may find that it's not the right style for you. You want to try something else. I can't tell you how many new in-the-box curriculum programs you can purchase. And we actually, on Facebook, we do have a brand new site called Oregon Homeschool Buy and Sell, which is just a group specifically for buying and selling curriculum and other homeschooling materials. You want to take a look at that. You can use an assortment of different curriculum offerings and classes. You can use standalone classes on anything you want. You don't have to use one specific thing. Some people might like a certain math program, but they're not crazy about the reading program that goes with that same package. So, and there are an awful lot of online classes right now. Some are free, some are paid. There are so many opportunities for classes and curriculum that if you wanted to try them all, you'd have your kid in school for 50 years. So you just, find some things that work for you and go with it. The main thing is to keep your kids engaged and excited about what they're doing. And one of the ways too to do that is hands-on activities, projects, exploration in lieu of curriculum. You just, what better way to learn economics than giving your kids some money and having them go shopping, right? And things like cooking or gardening or taking care of animals. There's so many things you can learn through really just through hands-on work, because you've got to read directions, you've got to do math to organize your things. You can build things, build a tree house. There's engineering and math and physics and economics in there, so a lot of different opportunities there. what about your learning environment, your socialization, the big socialization thing, right? And this has always been, you know, the big question with homeschooling is, oh, what about the socialization? How are they going to hook up with other kids? That's a big question for everybody this year. You know, it's like homeschoolers were never about staying home, really. As homeschoolers, we're used to going out, doing field trips, hanging out with other kids, hanging out with other families, meeting people. And this year it's different. So we all have to be really creative and find out how to connect with friends online. Our kids probably know more about Zoom conferencing than most of us adults at this point. Where every time I'm in a new Zoom conference, it's a new learning curve. Co-op groups, a lot of people talking about co-op groups where this has been a long time favorite for homeschoolers is you have a group of families and you take turns having, you know, the whole gang of kids and providing, you know, one family might be all about animal care, another family might do math and reading seminars, another family might do field trips, you know, so you've got a group of families and you kind of have a little collective of opportunities where the different parents engage in different ways. And then something new that we're all learning about this year is pods or bubbles, where you have a private teacher, and you can do this free or for a fee. Usually it's for a fee. Has a small cohort of kids, usually, you know, 5 or 6. Probably right now, not more than 10 because of our guidelines. But it's basically like a little mini school. And you might think that it looks like a private school, but according to the Department of Education, if you haven't incorporated as a private school, it's not a private school. It's just a, you know, it's a group homeschool. And I'm here to tell you the Department of Education says you can have a small cohort of kids being taught by a private teacher and it's still homeschooling. All right, so the bottom line here is it's easier than you think. It's a tremendous amount of fun. There are a lot of opportunities. You want to trust yourself that you can do this. You've been raising your child since the beginning, and you can keep on doing it. Trust your child. Find out what your child wants and how they respond, and you know, believe in them. Listen to them. And we are all in this together. We're all doing something new this year, and it's a challenge for everybody. And we can help each other, and that's pretty much what OHIN is here for, is to facilitate that. So we have a couple of handouts that I think Karen is going to email to you. There's some resources, particularly for helping your kids learn with diversity, and some websites to help support learning with diversity, and those are very helpful. One of our members put those lists together, and we're happy to share them with you. And I am now happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Okay. All right, thanks so much, Rosalyn. It was wonderful that you present to us like that. I haven't seen any questions in the chat yet. So if you have questions, please compose them, put them in the chat. Also, if you want to test out the chat, I'd love to know, you know, what are you thinking of choosing this fall, and what age is your child's? If you could put that in the chat, that would be really interesting to know, so that we have an idea of who we're answering questions for.
Bubbles. Bubbles.
Oh, okay. Yes, or you can wave your hand and we will unmute you so that you can ask your question.
All right, where can you receive the info for the letter of intent? The OHAN website, ohen.org/example, will tell you what you need for your letter of intent and how to submit it. Probably, I think about half of the counties or a third of the counties in Oregon let you file your letter of intent online. And that link is given also on that page, and it takes maybe about 2 minutes if you're careful or faster. So that would be a good place to get started with that. Very simple. Are the laws in Washington similar or different to Oregon for homeschooling? They're a little different, and I have to say, I am not 100% conversant with how Washington is set up for homeschooling, but they are also pretty simple for homeschooling. There's a lot of flexibility for how you homeschool in Washington as well as in Oregon.
Oops.
I was wondering about the charter schools. Are those set up by like wait list, or how do people apply? Do you apply for a charter school?
That's a really good question. We do have a list of charter schools on the OHAN website, and you navigate around to find them. The most of them are, I think, pretty full, and they do have a wait list. People have been really obviously flocking to them this year. And there's two factors to look at with the charter schools. One is that the charter schools have, they have a capacity because they have teachers and they have staff, and they obviously can't go over capacity. They are, a lot of them, looking at expanding because of the greater demand. So there's that, and some are still open, some do have wait lists. The other part of that is, in order to enroll in a charter school, let's say that you live in Multnomah County, and the charter school that you're interested in is chartered in, say, Josephine County. And so what you have to do when you enroll, or you want to enroll in your the school in Josephine County, is you submit, and the school helps you do this. You submit a request, an application to your school district in Multnomah County, asking them to release your child from that school district to the charter schools district, because they have to keep track of who they're providing educational services for. Now, there's a trick to that, in that Oregon has a statute that a school district can release no more than 3% of its students to other districts. And that's what you might have heard about, the 3% cap. So if you've already got 3% of your school district's kids released to other districts, then your kid might be denied that release. There is a process for contesting that, or appealing that decision. If there are any number of reasons for it, but basically that's the process. You find the school you're interested in and apply to it, and then they will help you work through the process of transferring out of your district to their district. Does that help? Does that answer your question?
Yes, it gave me a lot to think about.
Yeah, it's quite a process. Let's see, we got okay.
Mimi has a question. She's unmuted. So.
Okay, Mimi asks, can you send notes on where to purchase other material? And do kindergartners need certain learning criteria to advance What about age requirements for testing? If you're in Head Start, you still need to register PPB. Maybe that's Portland Public Schools. I don't know. Anyway, here's the deal. If your child is less than 6 years old, you don't have to worry about it. Whether you're, no matter what you're deciding to do, because in Oregon, a child's only required to be in school or homeschooled by the time they're 6 as of September 1st, which is today. So if your child's not 6 yet, just, do whatever you want. You can sign them up in a kindergarten program, or you can home and learn, or do some homeschooling, really whatever is going to work for you. As far as materials, oh gosh, there's so many programs, and there are two very popular programs for early learners. Waldorf and Montessori have homeschool curriculum. And if you Google Montessori homeschool or Waldorf homeschool, you'll get a ton of websites that have those things. Look for kindergarten curriculum. The Oregon Department of Education website has state standards for each grade. You can also go to, let me see, there's something called coreknowledge.org, and that has curriculum guidelines for basically what a kindergarten student would accomplish during the kindergarten year. It has it for every grade, really. There's the World Book, worldbook.com/typical course of study. And that's just Google World Book typical course of study and find that. So there are a number of websites that will give you guidelines for what a kindergarten student is likely to need. And as far as advancing, here's the thing. If you decide to send your child back to public school after homeschooling, most likely going to be placed in with their age group, regardless of how they're doing academically. And they'll have more challenging material, or they'll have some remediation in that age group. But we, as homeschoolers, we do generally recommend that you put more attention on age than on academic ability, because there is, this kind of goes back to the whole socialization thing. It is, it's really hard for a gifted 8-year-old to be in a class with 12-year-olds, even if the academic ability is the same, the social interests are the same, the social behavior is not the same, and that kid is going to be happier with other kids in that group. Really, school is not just about being able to do the math. It's a whole. You want to teach a kid how to survive well in life, and part of that is being able to get along with other people, and to be effective at what they're learning, to use education to accomplish things and to get ahead and to survive well. So as far as age groups and advancement, work with your kid, meet the kid where they are, and don't worry too much about, again, we're all in this together. Your kid is not going to fall behind because everybody else is at home as well. So don't worry about what the other kids are doing in class, because they're not in class. They're at home doing what you're doing. And as far as Head Start is well, it would either be a private program or be for younger than kindergarten. If it's younger than 6, you have to be concerned about it. Hope that answered your question, Mimi.
There was one more question up above about bubbles. If you had information about And let me scroll up in the chat.
Oh, I got where resources you had information on bubbles. Best thing to do would be just hook up with us on our discussion page on Facebook, Homeschooling in Oregon, and put some feelers out. There's someone has organized a meetup app where you can kind of like a dating app for homeschoolers, I guess, where you can find other families in similar locations, similar interests. I'm afraid I don't have that website or the name of that app here, but again, something that probably easy to find on that discussion group. And then also just see people all the time saying, hey, we're in Corvallis, and I've got an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old, and we like to, do a lot of our schooling outside. Is there anybody else in the area who wants to connect up with us and make a bubble? So it's a very informal thing right now. Some other questions? How many hours a day? Good question. There are no required number of hours for homeschooling. You'll find that when you're working at home with your kids, stuff happens a lot faster than it does in a classroom. And, if you think about a kid is average spending maybe 6 hours a day in a classroom, how much of that time is being spent in lining up and moving from one place to another and getting materials out and putting materials away and calling roll and announcements. And, so even optimistically, you're left in an hour with half an hour worth of actually school time. And if you've got 25 or 30 kids in that room that are all being taught the same thing, how much of that attention is actually going to any one child? So if you have, say an hour's worth of time in a classroom, maybe you can get through that same material in 10 or 15 minutes at home. And maybe a kid is just going to get the materials like, oh yeah, it makes total sense to me, we're fine. Then you're done with that subject. Or it might take longer, it might take something that a classroom might spend 20 minutes on, and after an hour and a half, the kid is still baffled. Well, one thing is that you have the opportunity to spend more time on it. You also have the opportunity to go back and say, well, is there something before this that you didn't get that's kind of getting in your way? So you have that flexibility too. We generally say that as far as amount of daily work, kind of a rule of thumb is figure on maybe 5 to 10 minutes per year of age per day. So a 6-year-old might do well with maybe an hour's worth of instruction in a day, whereas a 15-year-old might do 2 or 3 hours of instruction in a day. But it's very individual, and it's what works for you and what works for your child. But there are no absolute requirements. And then let's see, is it necessary to use a tablet for learning? Absolutely not. They're great. They're great tools, and some kids get a lot out of them. But I mean, if you consider, how long have tablets been around, and how long has homeschooling been around? A lot of kids, there's an awful lot of very successful homeschoolers who never had tablets. So you do not have to have them. You don't have to have even, there are some very, very traditional homeschoolers who don't use any electronics at all. I personally like electronics, and my kids are both proficient in technology. So I might be the wrong person to ask. But no, you don't need a tablet.
When you said the word proficient just now, it kind of made me think of two questions at once, but
Okay.
I was thinking of like documenting and tracking progress. Is that like, what are your thoughts on that as far as it pertains to those tests that you mentioned in the 3rd grade, the 5th grade?
Well, okay. First thing is the tests are, they're really not very complicated. They're basic math skills, basic reading skills, and they're multiple choice. And there's another feature on our website is at ohen.org/testing, and I'll tell you all about the tests and how they're run and what you need to do. But you know, a lot of homeschoolers don't really even prepare for the test. They just show up, do the test, go home, and they're fine. And it's not really a pass fail, it's a measurement. And if for some reason your child scores very badly on the test, which is hard to do, they have the option of taking it again as many times as they want. Or if they just let's say you have a child who just cannot comprehend what's on the test, you cannot answer the questions. There's two things. One is if they score below a certain percentile, which is 50th percentile, so and that's measured against all the students who ever take that test, then what happens to happen is they have to take the test the following year. So they would take a 4th grade test. And if they do worse than the first year, then they have to test again. And if they do worse in the 3rd year, then the Education Service District will meet with the family to see if any help is needed, or if they can, if maybe another sort of education is needed to help this kid learn. But the other thing too is if you have a child who's seriously not able to even comprehend the test at all, you might be on what's called a privately developed program, PDP, which is kind of like an IEP. It's a special program for this particular child's needs that specifies an alternative means of evaluation to testing, and basically says, we're going to see how this child is doing and if he's progressing adequately given his age and abilities. So really, people tend to get kind of worked up about the tests, but they shouldn't. And that testing page on OHEN's site is very helpful for that. In terms of documenting what you're doing, I'm a big documenter. I spent every year with my kids writing down everything we did. I kind of kept a journal and keep track of all the things we did and all the field trips we did and all the workbooks we finished and everything else. And at the end of high school, my daughter and I went through all the I had a different drawer for each year. I kept putting all the stuff in there, journals, and at the end of high school, my daughter and I went through everything, pulled out stuff we wanted to save for just sentimental value, and threw everything away. So there's not a whole lot of documentation really required. In high school, it becomes more important because if your child is looking at college or university, you might want to have a portfolio of work that was done during high school years.
Can I ask a really quick follow-up question before we move on?
Sure.
At what other points can the ESD intervene in like what the family's doing?
It's pretty rare. I imagine that in a very rare situation where a family ends up dealing with DCS or CPS or whatever initials we're calling it, the Child Protective Services. Let's say that someone alerts authorities that it looks like children aren't being fed, or that that they look sick, or they haven't seen the kids in 6 months, or one of these extreme things. Then the ESD might be called to find out if homeschooling is occurring. But other than that, the ESD is pretty hands off on, you filed your intent to homeschool and they trust you.
Thank you.
Sure. We have a question from Mimi. What impact are you seeing on COVID with children learning? Any suggestions if children have a hard time staying interested versus wanting to play? I meant what impacts on children with COVID. This is me talking. I'm not a leading expert on education, but I have some experience with it. If your children are having a hard time staying interested and just want to play, let them play, because they're going to learn through play. They're going to learn through, I was just reading a series of articles yesterday from some people who are educational experts who are saying that they're discovering that the more kids get out of the classroom, the faster they learn, because they're learning hands-on. They're learning things that they're excited about and that they'll remember. And if you force a child to continue doing something that he's really not interested in, how much of that is he going to retain? And if you think even just about math, look at, let's say that you have a kid doing workbook problems for an hour versus a kid who's, let's say, making a cake, right? And using measurements and fractions and ratios to make this cake so that it turns out edible. Which one is he going to remember better, right? So that's my opinion, is if your kids need to play, let them play, because then they'll be excited about what they're doing, and they'll probably learn something from whatever they're doing.
Yeah, I'm thinking like another aspect of that question too is like mental health and well-being. How do you help your child with this sort of difficult time we're all going through as a society? If you have resources or advice.
Oh, that is such a good question, and it's one of the things that we were talking about at the beginning of this, back in March, when everyone was, oh my God, now what do I do? I think it's really important to remember that the kids are experiencing a big change in their lives as well as we are, and to really acknowledge that. And you've got, I think a lot of times we don't stop and pay attention to what our kids need in terms of answers about everyday life. Are we going to be locked in our homes for the rest of our lives? Are we ever going to see grandma again? Are we ever going to go to the beach again? It's like, why do I have to go to school when we're in quarantine? A lot of questions that you wouldn't even think that come up. These kids really do have, they're curious about, they're worried about, they haven't thought about. And so I think it's important for the kids' mental health and handling stress to really listen to what are their concerns and to try and answer them honestly and calmly. We're not, we don't want to get kids really, really scared about things, but it's like, yeah, we've got this thing happening and we can all contribute to creating a future by being our best and studying and learning things and wearing our masks when we go outside, and whatever discussion that your family wants to have with the kids is like open up, be honest, and involve the kids in what's going on. That's what I would do.
That sounds awesome. Thank you so much, Rosalyn. We are just about at time. I don't see any last minute questions in the chat there or anything. I want to remind everybody we're going to send a follow-up email. We're going to make sure we include the slides. We created a book list with some books and other resources for folks. We're going to tell you how to access the recording. I am doing a survey on home learning and what the library can do to help you to make that easier for you and kind of get a feel of what people are choosing this fall. Please fill that out. I would love it. Appreciate it. I'm also gonna put out a call for interviews. I'm looking for people who are homeschooling for the first time this year. How are you accessing information? What kind of resources are you looking for? How are you finding them? What can the library provide for you? So if that comes to your email and that fits you, I'd love to hear from you. So I think that wraps it up. Any last words, Rosalyn?
I just, you can do this. We do have, we try at OHAN, we're trying to provide a lot of help and resources. And, and there are a lot of homeschoolers too who have a great track record, and they really seem to have this taped, and we're very happy to invite other homeschoolers to share their experiences and advice with some of the newer homeschoolers, and for people who are learning at home in other ways besides homeschooling as well.
All right. Thank you so much for talking with us all, and really appreciate your time and your expertise, Rosalyn. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and come to more library programs. Thank you. All right. Goodbye now.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.